Watch you rise, watch you fall. Now I'm about to break. Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain. Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fixed Fights podcast with Kurt and Ben. The boys are back. We are here. Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. Good to be back. I will say, though, I really enjoyed, I watched the NC2A tournament every year. Obviously not last year. I watch it every year, and I felt quite prepared this week after listening to our preview show last week.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I saw you tweeting a little bit about it. You enjoyed it, dude. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it gets me so fucking hyped, and when it comes to Kansas City in 3 years or whatever, I'm gonna follow college wrestling all year because I only watch college wrestling maybe twice or maybe 2 days a year, right? Just the tournament. But man, not knowing anything about those guys, just a little bit what you guys talked about on the show, I was all the way hyped. It's the most exciting sport, and that's the most exciting event in all of sports. I love it.
Dude, I agree. And I got to say, man, this year's finals were absolutely amazing. Some years there's there's some blowouts or, I don't think there was one bad match. I mean, the first two matches of the night go to overtime. Super dramatic. I mean, Penn State shows up like they always do. Iowa wins their first title in 11 years now. I mean, honestly, the whole weekend was great. And I have to say, ESPN did an amazing job with their coverage. I literally think I watched just about every match of that tournament. They had the multi-screen, you could throw on the broadcast. Dude, I had three things going on. I had it on my TV, my computer, and my phone. Absolutely loved it. And I hope a lot of people joined you in watching it, even if they don't follow wrestling all that much.
Well, I will say, this is the kind of last thing on this is for people that are, we're an MMA podcast for the most part, Gable Steveson profiles exactly like fucking Brock Lesnar, even down to the fact that, right, so if people didn't watch it, he's this clearly the best heavyweight wrestler in the country right now, and total athletic freak, has tons of charisma, and immediately tweeted at Vince McMahon after the tournament, don't be surprised if you see Gable Steveson make a few $1 million in the WWE and then try his hand at MMA when he's 33 and just decimate people, because that guy is a monster. And I would love to see him fight, an absolute monster. That guy, he could be doing, it seems like, any sport in the freaking world. It's insane that he's so big and so athletic.
Yeah, I mean, and he has a lot of options, right? You might see him in MMA. You might see him in WWE. And also, you're probably, in my opinion, you're going to see him make the Olympic team this year in 2 weeks. April 2nd and 3rd is the U.S. Olympic trials. I'm predicting Gable is going to make the team to represent the United States of America in Tokyo. So, and not only Gable, but a lot of these names you're going to be seeing in the next couple of years, right? It is so good. It produces a lot of great MMA fighters. I feel like we could talk about this for another hour, but There is so much to get to in the MMA world that we missed. Let's talk some fights, because there were some big fights that were announced, and none bigger than, I want to say, UFC 262. I'm correct with that, right?
I can double check, but that sounds
I think it's UFC 262 in May. We're going to get Charles Oliveira, Do Bronx, taking on Michael Chandler for the vacant UFC title. First off, give me your thoughts on not only the fight, but do you think this was the right move for that division?
I don't know if it was the right move for the division necessarily, because I think most people kind of agreed that Dustin Poirier deserved a title shot next. But from what I understand, Poirier didn't want, he wants the money fight. Right. And it's a bigger money fight for him to fight Conor McGregor a third time than it is to fight for this belt. So it does feel a little weird giving Michael Chandler a title shot, right? Just coming off of one win in the division, even with all of his history in Bellator. I mean, he still was like we can say everything. Michael Chandler was a great champion for Bellator, but he also got knocked out not that long ago by their current champion. So even with Chandler's, like all the context of Chandler's career long accomplishments, I don't think he necessarily deserved the title shot, but Poirier didn't want that title shot. And the flip side is I totally think Charles Oliveira deserves a title shot. I got no problem with that. So maybe not the best fight like rankings wise or division wise, but I'm happy to see Charles Oliveira getting a title shot. I think Poirier probably deserves a title shot more, but that's not what he wants. He wants the money fight. So I think for most parties involved, this worked out for the best.
Yeah, I think that's where the disconnect is. Like, I get the outrage of especially Chandler specifically, right? But they brought Chandler in for a reason, right? They're not. Mm-hmm. They generally don't like putz around with these guys, and they always give them super tough fights. And dude, Chandler knocked out Dan Hooker in a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Yeah. Like, he did what he was supposed to do. And like you said, man, Dustin Poirier wants the money fight. Dustin Poirier should be the champion right freaking now. That Conor McGregor fight should have been for the title. It was not. And like you said, he's going for the money fight. He wants the Conor McGregor fight. So what's the problem? I mean, listen, if it wasn't Conor and Dustin, there's three guys it could have been. Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje. I got to say, I am a little surprised I didn't go with the Gaethje-Chandler fight for the strap, because that's probably the sexier fight out of the two. But man, Charles Oliveira deserves this. And dude, you said this last year prior to the Tony Ferguson fight that at the end of 2021, Charles Oliveira would be the UFC lightweight champion. And God damn it, you might just be right.
It's crazy. It seemed so, even when I said that, I kind of doubted myself. I think I said it believing that, I truly think of the top like five or wherever we're looking at the division at that point, I thought, and I still think Oliveira is the best overall fighter at lightweight in that like top five or so. So I think that's why I picked him to be the champion, but I kind of tongue in cheek thought there's no way the UFC is going to give like a Brazilian who kind of has a rocky history, right? People kind of might remember him like folding against Max Holloway, right? He's not American. If he speaks English, I don't think he speaks it super well.
He speaks any English, honestly.
Like I think of him as the best lightweight fighter, but I didn't expect the UFC to actually give him a shot. But here they are. And you're right that like they brought in Chandler for a reason, right? They had him to be a weigh-in replacement for the big fight in Abu Dhabi. They've done a bunch of promotional packages with Michael Chandler, including one for Black History Month. So yeah. they want to push Michael Chandler. So, I get it. I'm pumped for Charles Oliveira though, where it's like, it really feels like skills and winning streaks are worth something now.
Yeah. I love the fight, man. Chandler's my dude. He's always been my dude. I'm riding with Chandler. I'm glad he got it. He's put a lot of work in this sport. Again, if you don't follow Bellator, you probably knew who Michael Chandler is still. He deserves it. A couple other fights that were announced. Bantamweight got a couple bangers. TJ Dillashaw is coming back, and he is getting that Corey Sandhagen fight. I absolutely love that fight. Obviously, with Jan and Aljo, with that mess, they're going to have to run it back. I think this makes a ton of sense for Corey Sandhagen. He gets another big name. And it's a tough fight for Dillashaw. Dillashaw is now 35 years old, had 2-year layoff. I'm really interested to see where he is when he comes back, and there is no better way to test it than a fight with Corey Sandhagen.
Yeah, no tune-up fights in the UFC, man. What a bantamweight, and including the fight we're going to talk about next too. Like, bantamweight might be the best division in the UFC, even better than lightweight maybe, just because there's so many fresh names. Like, I kind of forgot that TJ Dillashaw existed, and then boom, here he is fighting another incredible up and coming kind of contender. So I am super pumped. I love that they announced these two like big bantamweight fights at the same time, just to build a little bit more anticipation.
Yeah, the one you're alluding to is Rob Font taking on Cody Garbrandt. I'm glad that Garbrandt is staying at 135, at least right now. I don't really have any interest in him going down to 125. I think the Figueiredo fight was fun at first, but then, we saw with Brandon Moreno and Askar Askarov. I mean, there's plenty of guys down there for Figueiredo to fight. Rob Font is a tough matchup for Cody Garbrandt. Rob Font has looked so good. I mean, he always looks really good. And Garbrandt looked really good in his last fight. I'm really pumped for that one as well.
Yeah, absolute banger and a big opportunity for Rob Font, who's been kind of like around that level for a while, and I feel like this is his chance, his best chance maybe lately, to really kind of get over the hump of being like a clear top 10 guy to moving into like kind of a clear top 5 guy.
Yeah. Great matchmaking there. What else do we? Oh, dude, big news coming out of ONE FC, but I think people blew a little bit out of proportion, I will say, because if you read between the lines with what Gordon Ryan said, you have to read. So Gordon Ryan has signed a deal with ONE FC, which is great. We're both pumped about it. And of course, they build it as like an MMA and, grappling fight. But if you read what Gordon Ryan says, he says he will fight MMA if he chooses. He never once said, at least in his post, that he is going to be fighting MMA. He just said it is an option. But I mean, still, there is plenty of optimism to be had there. He's having a real tough time to get fights in jiu-jitsu. I would love to see him fight, man. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, I actually wrote about this on Grappling Insider. He said Gordon Ryan clarified that like MMA is on the table and that his entire focus right now is like the 2022 ADCC. So he's going to be, for sure, he might be training MMA and practicing it, especially with Gary Tonin in the room with him. But I don't think we're going to see him in an MMA fight until at least like after the 2022 ADCCs. Also of note, though, is Buchecha is signed with ONE FC, and Buchecha is actually set to make his MMA debut, I think, here pretty soon in a couple months.
Yeah.
So even if Gordon Ryan wants to stick with just grappling, they could throw up a Buchecha versus Gordon Ryan rematch in just jiu-jitsu, and then even like simmer a possible MMA fight between the two down the road. Like there's options there. And ONE FC is clearly like creative and they do fun things.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's just at least in the grappling realm, I think it's going to be tough for him to get big matches out there besides Buchecha. Obviously, Buchecha would be huge. It'd be a rematch, but other than that, he might fight some like, washed or random, MMA fighters, right? And is that a lot more fun than what he's doing now? By the way, Gordon does have a fight this coming Friday, I want to say.
Friday against Wagner Rocha. Yeah.
Yeah. So that should be a fun one. Couple fights fell through, and actually the two fights that did fall through tied hand in hand with one another. The event this past weekend, we lost Gregor Gillespie and Brad Verdell, which is that was a bummer, dude. I was really looking forward to Gregor getting back in there, and then why did we lose him? Because Alexander Volkanovski, his teammate, tested positive for COVID-19. That's a bummer, man. I was really looking forward to that Volkanovski fight. I mean, Brian Ortega looked really freaking good, and I think this was an opportunity for Volkanovski, if he did win, to kind of push himself over a little bit with the fans. I think fans are still kind of sour about the two Max Holloway fights. A lot of people obviously love Max Holloway and didn't believe that Volkanovski won those. So this is a bummer. I hope they can reschedule it soon.
Yeah, it was a big hit, and I was honestly ready. I was going to watch some fights before we recorded the podcast to make sure, but I think I was ready to make the case that Brian Ortega beats Volkanovski, but we'll see. Like I said, I needed to watch, kind of refresh my memory, but just without doing any like quote unquote study. I don't know if I want to call it that, because a lot of it's me just chilling and watching fights, but without doing that, in my mind, I was ready to pick Ortega to beat Volkanovski.
We don't have to go too far into this, but like, why? What brought you to that, or what was going to bring you to that prediction?
Basically, Ortega's moments of finishing ability and like complete offense. I think Volkanovski is like still getting way, way better on the feet, but I think Ortega is really cleaning up his game, and his most recent performance where he looked totally like zeroed in, refocused, all that good stuff. I think we've seen a hint of Ortega version 2.0. But, and I also think Volkanovski can be a little overconfident on the ground. He's never gotten into trouble, I guess, on the mat. He's only really dominated, but I think Ortega is just kind of a different level in terms of his submission threats. But like I said, I need to like rewatch Ortega against Korean Zombie and rewatch the last couple of Volkanovski fights against Max Holloway. But that's kind of where I was leaning.
Respect. Maybe they push it back to that UFC 262 card we just alluded to, because obviously they're not going to throw it on 261. That card's like stacked out of the gills, but maybe 262.
We'll see.
Before we talk about UFC 260, let's briefly talk about the event that happened this past weekend. Derek Brunson, Kevin Holland. If you don't mind, I would like to go first on this one. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I picked Brunson going into this. I think a lot of people really, I don't want to say, maybe I want to say it, they kind of overestimated Kevin Holland, and that happens a lot, right? Like they get these guys with either fun personalities or that score a couple wins and they completely just latch on to them. And Derek Brunson is a veteran, and I think Derek Brunson in his career has finally turned the corner. Again, he's I believe 36, 37 years old, but do you agree that the Brunson of old probably would have gotten finished in that second round? You know what I'm saying? Like the Brunson of old would get hurt, and then while he's hurt, kind of like Cody Garbrandt would just go diving headfirst into more punches and kicks, but instead he used his wrestling. I thought Kevin Holland was ridiculous, and I'm not here to knock a guy for having fun or, you know, be the negative Nancy and the party pooper. But dude, like when you're getting dominated, like what are we doing here? Like stop talking, man, and fight. Like Kevin Holland had routes to win that fight. He was content to be the funny guy and talk the whole time. And it just like, frankly, it was annoying for me. I want to say it was borderline an embarrassing performance.
Yeah. A couple things. First of all, I 100% agree with you that Derek Brunson of just a couple years ago probably gets finished here. And that's why I picked Kevin Holland, because we've seen Derek Brunson kind of lose focus in fights. We've seen him drawn into brawls. We've seen him like taken completely off of his game. And I thought, who better to do that, right, than a guy who just talks your fucking ear off the entire fight. So what was, I can't remember if it was the second or the third or maybe even like the fourth round when Holland hurt Brunson. And I kind of thought, all right, this is it. Like, this is where it happens, because, you know, Holland's been in his ear for 15 fucking minutes. Derek Brunson can't control himself anymore. He's going to throw his chin up in the air and start throwing bungalows. And he didn't. He went to his wrestling. He was smart on the ground. He did good work in terms of ground and pound on the mat to keep, I felt like a lot of the fight on the mat was Holland just tying up Brunson and kind of hoping for a stand up. But Brunson was, like you said, a veteran. Like he knows how to apply ground and pound. He knows what amount of work he needs to do to prevent a stand up. So honestly, man, I think I underestimated Brunson's kind of composure, and I also overestimated Holland here. I do think Kevin Holland is a type of guy who, for sure, I think his natural kind of flow state is him talking. But what we saw was that like going off the rails, right? I think it would have been better for, like, I think Kevin Holland probably doesn't fight very well if you say, hey, shut up, like don't say anything and just focus. That probably doesn't work for him. He needs the talking to like calm himself down or whatever. But clearly he was, at that point, it was distracting him, right? Like I can't get into his head, and I hope he doesn't stop talking, because that's what made him so freaking interesting to begin with. But you can take it too far, and without playing too much like psychologist, it seemed like he took it a little too far.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. Again, like I'm not saying that he has to change his MO, and he basically said that after the fight, but my problem was there was just no urgency. Like zero urgency. And it's like, dude, like at some point, like I get, like if you're the one dominating the fight and you want to talk shit and have fun and be loose, like I get that's like his flow state, like you said. But at some point, dude, you're literally giving rounds away. Like, and the boiling point for me was that fifth round when he took Derek Brunson down. And it's like, all right, maybe he gets something going, and he's still doing absolutely nothing and just talking. It's like, bro, like what are we doing here?
And I think it's also more frustrating, and part of maybe what you and I are both frustrated about is the guy clearly has a ton of talent. Like when he tagged Brunson, he hurt him. Like on the feet, he has a beautiful straight cross. Like he's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He actually, like, when he chose to attack from his back, I think he was making Brunson work. Like, he clearly has a lot of ability and talent to be a legitimate, like, top 10 mainstay at middleweight, I think. But who knows? You know what, man? Maybe this I know he's lost in the UFC before, but never won quite so high profile. So, I'd like to think I came into the fight as a Kevin Holland fan, a little bit less so now, if I'm being totally honest, but I'd like to think he's the type of guy who can give himself an honest look at that and like fix his mistakes, realize he wasn't urgent when he needed to be. And even if he wants to keep talking, that's fine. If that's how he performs best, I'm fine with that. But yeah, the final 5 minutes of the fight was incredibly frustrating because it was clear he had more in the gas tank too. Like he could have done so much more, and he just has so much talent. But live and learn, I guess.
Derek Brunson called out Paulo Costa. Obviously, one fight we didn't mention was Paulo Costa pulled it out of the Robert Whittaker fight. Kelvin Gastelum is stepping in a fight that was supposed to happen a couple of years ago, but did not. We remember that we got Kelvin Gastelum versus Israel Adesanya because of that. But I love that call out. I think Brunson versus Paulo Costa would be a ton of fun. I think Brunson deserves it. Kevin Holland mentioned going down to 170. I honestly would like that as well. I think his frame probably fits 170 a little bit better.
Yeah, and he was talking about that even before the fight, like, oh, I want to jump back down to 170, and I'm fine with that. And I think at 170, his takedown defense will be a little bit less of a liability because he will be able to get more attacks off of his back because he's going to be taller compared to that competition. So not to like overanalyze, but I think his game translates better overall at 170 as well.
Anybody else on this card you want to shout out? There was some fun stuff that happened.
The one guy that sticks out to me, and maybe he was been on your radar, but he was just not on mine. Adrian Yanez. That guy is real good, right? Like Gustavo Lopez was a Combate Americas champ, really good guy. Took Merab to a decision in his short notice UFC debut. Gustavo Lopez was no pushover, and Adrian Yanez made him look like an amateur on the feet. Like, I got to start paying more attention because this guy wasn't really on my radar, and now I see, he's now 2-0 in the UFC with 2 knockouts. He's a guy to watch, I think, for sure at 135.
This is why what Daniel Vreeland does with his prelim primer is so good.
Yeah.
I was on Yanez. Why? Because I did the prelim primer with Yanez there, so I had the opportunity to watch his fights and really dive into him. And dude, he is so freaking good. That knockout was a thing of beauty. Definitely keep your eye out on that guy. He's a stud.
Yeah, he has, just tons of skill, like tons of skill. I don't know how else to describe it. I guess I just had been kind of sleeping on him before.
Dude, there's so many fighters now. It's hard to keep track of like literally everybody. But then when, guys have these breakout performances like this and boom, now they're on your radar. How about Grant Dawson knocking out Leandro Santos?
Oh, dude.
Sorry, Leonardo Santos with literally 1 second left. Santos goes for, frankly, kind of a lazy leg lock and just gets finished. Craziness.
Yeah, that was pretty fucking wild. I think on my scorecard, at least, that was headed towards a draw. Maybe I was going to do 10-8 in the final round, but that was headed towards either a Santos win or a draw at best for Grant Dawson.
Yeah, love the heat in the ladies fight too with Montserrat Ruiz and Cheyenne Bays. Bays was going to follow that bitch home. There was spitting allegations, wild craziness.
Did you see Ruiz though? Like, totally said she didn't spit on her. Ruiz was like, when asked about it, she was like, "What? I didn't spit on her." Like,
did you see the slow down version online?
I did, but
it definitely looks like she makes a motion, but I couldn't see any spit come out of her mouth.
Yeah, I don't think she spit on her. Those are both. I saw both of these women fight in Invicta. I will say Cheyenne Bays, formerly, what was her I want to say her last name used to be Vlismas. Really emotional fighter. And Montserrat Ruiz, not particularly emotional. So if I'm leaning one side to like kind of side with here, I think Cheyenne Bays was super, super frustrated that she couldn't fucking escape that case of Gatami for the life of her. And frankly, like her escapes were, I don't want to say like, I don't want to take anything away from Montserrat Ruiz, who is a really good wrestler. And like, that's obviously like her best position. But Cheyenne Bays seemed total. She had like one escape to get out of that, and it didn't work, and just nothing. Like she didn't want to let go of the position. I don't know. I was disappointed in her in that fight for a variety of reasons, to be honest.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird fight.
I like the heat though.
I did like the heat, and dude, I don't think I've ever seen anyone like use like the head and arm and hold that position so effectively. It was very weird, but yeah, it was effective, and I'm sure Bays was very, very frustrated, and it kind of boiled over. But again, love the heat.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to UFC 260 this weekend. Big pay-per-view. A couple of fights have also fallen out, so the card is a little bit thin. But man, this heavyweight fight at the top of it does not get any better than this. Two real good guys, man. Did you get a chance to listen to Francis Ngannou on the Joe Rogan podcast?
Oh, I have not. I didn't even know he was on there.
He was. Joe Rogan's actually been doing a lot of MMA fighters lately, but he had Francis on that show, and Francis talks about, his upbringing and some of the stuff he had to do, and him getting out of Cameroon. He goes to Paris and then eventually obviously ends up in Las Vegas, and man, it makes you appreciate what you have, especially in America, because that man was working for his family in sand mines at 10 years old, walking 2 miles to school. I suggest anyone to watch that. And, he's just taking on pretty much an American hero in Stipe Miocic, right? The guy's the UFC champion. He's also still a full-time firefighter. Love this fight. And I got to say, dude, like, I was hoping to have like a read on this fight by the time we got here, but I really just don't. And it's crazy.
How can you? It's impossible.
I mean, dude, like, since their first fight, Francis Ngannou has fought, what, 4 times?
Mm-hmm.
Let me make sure.
5 times. 5 times.
5 times.
We forget the Derek Lewis fight never happened. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I'm still amazed that if you told me Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou fought and it wasn't the greatest fight ever, I'm still amazed. But not one of the concerns that we left the Stipe Miocic fight have been addressed. Like, we don't know if Francis has improved his takedown defense. You'd like to think he has, but like, I mean, dude, he knocked out Blades, Velasquez, Dos Santos, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik in under a half a round. And I think that's what makes it so hard. And obviously he's got the game-changing power, right? Stipe's a little bit older. Dude, I just can't put my finger on it. Do you have a strong lead on this fight?
No, and like how can you? I think first of all, I haven't listened to the Ngannou on Rogan, but I will say I'm a huge Ngannou fan just because of his story. I've heard him talk about it in other interviews, and the guy is pretty fucking incredible. Almost like Stipe Miocic, also an American hero. Francis Ngannou is kind of his own type of American hero because he's like doing the legit American dream from like poverty to where he's at now. But as for the fight, like, Francis Ngannou has fought Curtis Blades and Cain Velasquez since then, 2 of the division's absolute best takedown artists, and we still don't know anything about his takedown defense, right? Like, obviously, I have to believe he's been working on it, but at the same time, like, there are limits. Even if he's like in the room doing MMA wrestling, I've said it before, and it might sound silly to people, but like, there's limitations to not having a background in one specific martial art rather, where that's all you do. Like Stipe grew up wrestling and did it in college. It might sound silly, but like Francis Ngannou would be well served to straight up take like gi jiu-jitsu classes. And obviously that might feel a little silly or like make him seem out of place, but like there's moments in an MMA fight where all that's happening is jiu-jitsu, or all that's happening is wrestling, where one guy has to finish a single leg and all that's happening in that moment is wrestling, or one guy has to take his back and all that's happening in that moment is jiu-jitsu. And that's where like having an actual base in a specific martial art really, really helps. And I think it's just really hard for Francis Ngannou to fill that gap training the way he does, which is MMA specific. I just read an interview with his coach, Eric Nixick, at Extreme Couture. And he did say, he was like, oh, we're working on wrestling and cardio, like every single class, every single session, we're doing MMA wrestling. And that doesn't, like, for sure he's focusing on it. And I know this is kind of a long-winded response, but like, that doesn't give me a ton of confidence, just because he needs just the absolute basic specific skill, like acquisition. So I think there's a limit to how far you can get on being athletic and super powerful. But lucky for Francis Ngannou, he fights in the one division where being athletic and super powerful can, you can be Brock Lesnar, you can win a UFC title. So to answer your question, I don't know if I have a long read on this fight, but that's kind of where my thoughts are, is like, Ngannou clearly has the power and explosion and whatever to just starch Miocic in the first minute and a half. Like, I don't doubt that. And I'm actually, spoiler alert, picking Ngannou to win this fight, but with zero confidence whatsoever, because I'm not at all convinced that he's filled the gaps in his game that Stipe exposed like 3 years ago at this point.
I just wish that one of those fights produced even one grappling exchange, you know what I'm saying? Just to where we could have like seen him pressed against the cage or seen him down block and sprawl. I'm with you, man.
Seen a second round.
Yeah, right. And dude, Stipe Miocic, I mean, dude, he put it on Ngannou in that fight. I mean, when he weathered the storm, he had Ngannou tired, he had Ngannou frustrated, he had Ngannou lost. And man,
I might flip-flop just as we're talking right now, to be honest.
I do, man. I'm going to lean Stipe just because he is the champ, and I've seen him do it before, right? But like you said, dude, would I be surprised if Ngannou goes out there and finishes Stipe Miocic in the first round? Absolutely not. But the longer this fight goes, and I think we're going to see it very early. I think Stipe is not going to mess around too long on the feet. We're going to see early when he does get to Ngannou's hips, gets him against the cage, gets him down. I think that's going to be very telling on how the fight goes. But I got to say, one thing I'm surprised about is Ngannou is the betting favorite right now. Like, I get that his punch is very scary, right? He's literally a wrecking machine. But I mean, Stipe Miocic schooled him for 25 minutes, man. That should count for something. I'm going to go Stipe here. I think it's going to look very similar to the first fight. I think he's going to be able to take him down. I think he's going to be able to wear him out. I do think it's going to be very scary for Stipe at some points, but I think he gets it done, man, and I think he sets up one of the biggest fights in UFC history against Jon Jones.
Yeah. You know what, man? Not to be unprofessional here, but I think I'm switching my pick like on the fly right now the more that I think about it. I'm going with you. I'm agreeing with you. I'm actually going to go Miocic. I've been saying Ngannou for months, but the more that I talk about this fight out loud and the more I think about it, like, I don't think Ngannou is like a mentally weak person at all, obviously, given his background. Like, but what we're asking him to do is like a pretty big ask here is, he these past 4 fights, he's come out like a bat out of hell, and starched his past 4 opponents, clearly. I think the issue here is he tried to do that against Stipe in their first fight and it totally backfired. So we're asking Ngannou to do something I think really difficult here, which is say like, the partner who you danced with, who you came to the dance with, is going out crazy, try to get a first minute knockout, right?
Yeah.
But he knows if I fail in that regard, I've already felt what Stipe could do to me for 25 minutes if I can't get him out of there early. So that it's just a really big ask for Ngannou, like mentally, just to deal with that. Like, and I'm really curious to see not just defending takedowns, but can he get back up and still have energy? Because I think their first fight, that was a huge thing. Ngannou had no technical get-up game whatsoever.
Nothing.
And then when he did get back on his feet, because he was so inefficient getting back to his feet or couldn't, it was just the restart of the round, he was just completely gassed. So I am a huge Francis Ngannou fan, but I guess, yeah, now that I'm speaking it out loud, I'm going to go with Stipe again, just because he knows what he's going to have to do. Stipe is also a guy who knows, like, I'm going to have to weather one hell of a storm to begin with. And he did that against Daniel Cormier in the last fight. So yeah, I guess I'll go Stipe. I'm going to go Stipe by decision again. I think it will look very similar to their fight at UFC 220.
It's just a big ask, and it's hard to pick Ngannou when we just don't know. We still have so many questions, and again, I think that is the intrigue of this fight, man.
And dude, like, not to overanalyze, which is like basically all we do, I guess, but like, I don't want to look too far into his social media because clearly that's not telling the full story, but it is a little like, I know I read that interview with Ngannou's coach saying they work on wrestling every practice, but you know, I want to see Ngannou in there with a group full of other grapplers. You know, I don't think like one-on-one wrestling practices or working individually is really what he needs. He needs to be in there like doing 5 or 10 minute wrestling rounds with a bunch of other fighters.
Yeah, like Shark Tank style.
Yeah.
Get them tired, get fresh guys in there, you know.
And I'm just not convinced that's what's happening. So yeah, we're just not seeing it. You know, maybe it's happening behind the scenes. He's not putting it on social media, whatever. But yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence in Ngannou as much as I like him. But also, like, let's say he starches Stipe in 18 seconds. Like, are we really going to be surprised? Like, he clearly can do that.
Let me ask you this. Let's say the first round, Ngannou does have takedown defense, right? He keeps on his feet, but he can't knock Stipe out. Stipe takes his best punches. How fresh do you think Ngannou is going to be going into that second and third round? Because again, we don't even know, like, cardio-wise, like how this guy is. We've only seen his cardio really pushed once, and it did not look good. It's like, I truly do not know, man.
Well, I would have kind of assumed that he's improved his cardio, because especially if there's one thing Extreme Couture is going to do well, it's going to make sure that he's in shape. So I do think it's improved, but I think Stipe is a heavyweight that uses his own cardio as a weapon. So I think Ngannou will almost certainly have better cardio than he did at their first fight. And at the very least, he'll be, I think, more mentally prepared for what's about to happen. But Stipe is a guy who, like, used his cardio against Daniel Cormier to win. Like, you know, I think Miocic will basically always have the better cardio in this matchup.
Last question on this. What fight interests you more, John Jones versus Ngannou or John Jones versus Stipe?
Probably Jones versus Ngannou. I think I've talked about this before, but Jones versus Ngannou, just because the dynamics of it, like the thought of John Jones facing such a devastating puncher is a little bit more like titillating to me. But obviously if Miocic comes out here, he's basically like the consensus best heavyweight of all time against the consensus best 205er, and or, you know, a lot of people have Jones as their best pound for pound ever. So there would be some real history involved if he fought Miocic. But against Ngannou, like, that's like what I want. I want to see John Jones against huge heavyweights that can take his fucking head off.
Yeah, agreed. I think I kind of lean Stipe a little bit more just because I want to see that dynamic and again, the history, possibly the greatest heavyweight of all time versus the greatest light heavyweight of all time. The winner of that probably is the greatest of all time. I think Stipe is knocking on that door of, you know, I definitely think he's one of the greatest of all time, right? I think he's up at that upper table with the John Jones and with GSP, but we shall see. Co-main event. Tyron Woodley taking on Vicente Luque. Tyron Woodley has lost, 15 straight rounds. I guess not a full 15 because Colby finished him. Dude, I think this is a terrible, terrible matchup for him. I think Tyron Woodley can beat some guys. I think he can maybe beat some fringe top 10 guys. But to me, Vicente Luque is not that dude. Vicente Luque is getting a great opportunity here, right? Tyron Woodley has looked absolutely just listless in his last 3 fights, right? He has offered no sense of urgency, no offense. He's been content with just putting himself against the cage and kind of resting there, getting taken down. It's just not the Tyron Woodley we saw win the title and defend the title. I mean, are you with me, or do you think there is something left in the tank for Tyron Woodley here?
I'm sadly with you. I think you even said it after Woodley's last performance that like he needs to stop fighting these like hungry contenders that can just like put a pace on him.
Yeah.
And guess what Vicente Luque is like a fucking hungry contender who can fight at a really, really high pace. If you want to make an argument for Woodley here, maybe you could say, oh, it's a 3-round fight, so maybe he's more likely to like let it go earlier. Maybe he was concerned about like conserving his energy in his past like 5-round fights, but yeah, I think this is a really, really rough matchup for him just because Luque will put a pace on him, will throw a ton. And even if Woodley tries for a takedown here, Luque is a phenomenal front headlock guy who will be threatening with darces and whatnot the second Woodley puts his head in there. So it's a really, really rough matchup for Woodley. Clearly he has power. I don't think he's lost that power. He still, he hasn't been like knocked out clean. No, really. You have to go back to Nate Marquardt in Strikeforce when he was like totally finished. Yeah. The Colby finish was a little weird, right? But yeah, I'm picking Luque here. However, I like Vicente Luque, but I would love to see Tyron Woodley, get back in the win column just because 4 in a row seems, I don't know. He was a really, really good champion when he was champion. And it's hard to see him like fall off a cliff so quickly.
Very underrated champion, I think. The guy had a great run winning the title and defending it. But yeah, man, I think Luque is a very good grappler. I do think Woodley might try to wrestle a little bit more, but again, like I don't know how much success he's going to have. And Vicente Luque, like you said, he pushes the pace. He's a buzzsaw on the feet. I kind of think Tyron Woodley might be fighting for his job here. If he goes out there and gets dominated for another 3 rounds or even finished, you put 4 fights together, a 4-fight losing streak. He's never had the best relationship with Dana White. I believe he is 38, 39 years old now. I want to say he's probably fighting for his job here, so maybe that gives him a little bit more urgency. But to me, man, Vicente Luque is not the guy. I think Luque gets it done and gets himself a very big win. Because I mean, a win over Tyron Woodley still does something, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially if he finishes him, because Covington took until the 5th round to finish him, and Burns didn't finish him. Usman didn't finish him. So yeah, I think it would be a huge feather in Luque's cap. Man, I'm looking at Luque's. I know we've been high on Vicente Luque for some time, but looking at his record, man, in the UFC outside of his he lost his promotional debut way back in 2015, but since then he has only lost a decision to Leon Edwards and a decision to Stephen Thompson. So we've been saying it, but just confirming, he is the real deal.
Dude, he is very, very freaking good. And I love that he's getting this opportunity again, kind of at the expense against one of the the former greats of the UFC, but I'm happy he's getting the opportunity. Yeah. Sean O'Malley taking on Thomas Almeida. I really enjoy this fight. Sean O'Malley did not look good in his last fight, and I think he made himself look even worse after the fight. Obviously, claiming that he was, I don't know, what did he say? Winning the fight. It's not a loss. He's still undefeated, blah, 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 blah. He did lose. He was, in my opinion, losing the fight before he lost. And now he gets a guy in Thomas Almeida that, remember Thomas Almeida a couple years ago going into that Cody Garbrandt fight was like, those two dudes were on a collision course. They were both undefeated, both on the rise, both finishing dudes. And it was like, the winner of this is that dude. Like, he's the next big thing. Obviously, Cody Garbrandt beats him, goes on to win the title. And Thomas Almeida has taken some losses since then. I'm wondering how much Thomas Almeida still has left in the tank. I mean, he's only 29 years old. He did get finished by Garbrandt, and he did get finished by Rob Font. Obviously, no shame in either of those. Did lose to Jonathan Martinez in his last fight, who's pretty damn underrated himself. I just wonder how much Thomas Almeida has left in the tank. You think they're giving this fight to O'Malley as sort of a layup, or do you think Almeida can still challenge him?
I think the matchmakers certainly think it might be a layup here. I'm not ready to give up on Tomas Almeida. He's lost 4 of his last 5, going back to that Garbrandt fight. And there are, he throws himself into the fire for sure. So like a couple of those losses there were by knockout. Like he's going to put himself in danger. But I'm actually going to ride with Almeida here for an upset. Let me look up the odds here. Wow. Yeah, it's a decent upset. Almeida's like plus 260. So I actually, I think skill really matters here. And I've just never really been super high on Sean O'Malley. And I think when they're trading, when they're exchanging, for sure, Almeida's chin might be an issue. But I think his technical kickboxing, even though it might appear a little bit wild at times or maybe even reckless, I think it's better than O'Malley's. I think he throws straighter punches. I think maybe O'Malley might have a better kicking game, but Almeida might be maybe a more powerful kicker. I think this is at least a much closer fight than the odds suggest. But yeah, I'm actually riding with Almeida here, just because I'm not super high on O'Malley, and I think a lot of that we kind of saw against Chito Vera. I've just never been super high on him. I think a lot of his hype is due to his personality. For sure, He has that, that incredible finish on the Contender Series that helped kind of propel him. But skill-wise, I actually, I think Almeida might be better on the feet. Just questions about Almeida's chin are out there for sure.
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. Definitely questions about his chin. I think O'Malley does have the power to possibly expose Almeida's chin, but I like this fight a lot on the feet. I think Almeida at 29 years old still has some juice left in the tank, and this is a huge opportunity for him. And we've never seen Sean O'Malley, fight coming off a loss. He had the first loss of his career. I don't think he took it all that well. So we're going to see. There's a lot to like in this fight. I'm kind of surprised that this wasn't the co-main event over Luque and Woodley, but I guess maybe namesake wise they threw Woodley in the co-main event. I mean, not that it really matters, right? Both are 3-round fights, but
yeah,
I'm gonna ride with. I guess I'm gonna go O'Malley, but man, I wouldn't be all that surprised if Thomas Almeida does pull off the upset here.
It's definitely one of those, like, you're right. It was like back in like 2015, 2016. Almeida was the guy. Like a lot of people were pegging him to be a future champ. So
yeah,
we got short memories in this sport sometimes.
It is very true. Rounding out the main card, rescheduled Jillian Robertson versus Miranda Maverick. I absolutely love this fight. I'm glad it's getting the pay-per-view shine. It should be fun. And then Jamie Malarkey taking on Kama Worthy. Kama Worthy can bang. And then there's only, it looks like, according to Wikipedia, which might not be the best source always, but there's only 4 other fights on this card. So a 9-fight card, and that's prior to weigh-ins and possible COVID cancellations.
Man. There's 10 on Tapology, so I don't know what we're looking at different, but yeah, there's already been. I mean, we lost Ortega Volkanovski. I'm looking on Tapology now. Johnny Walker and Jimmy Crute was supposed to be on this card.
I know, that was a big one.
Blubbery Boys, Blagoy Ivanov and Marcin Tybura were supposed to be on this card. Alonzo Menefield and Thick Willie Knight. I think William Knight is probably still, or Alonzo Menefield is still on this card, but
yeah. So he's gonna be taking on Fabio Charant. Might have seen him on CES. He's he's pretty damn good. So
yeah,
that should be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with a 9 or 10 fight card. Like, I don't need to be watching MMA for 6.5 hours on a Saturday.
Right. Yeah. So that's that. I don't think we missed anything, did we? I'm trying to think. There was a lot that happened between last week and this.
I think that's it. I feel like there was at least one other big news story. I mean, we were kind of talking about it before we hit record that we're going to be back in the actual swing of things. It feels like next week with Bellator coming back.
Yeah.
PFL coming back in about 30 days. Actually, you know what? I am super pumped about PFL. You know why? I say this every year, not to take us too far off track at the end here, but every year that I watch the NC2A tournament, I say, I wish there was a night in MMA where they did this, where they just they do a championship fight in every single weight class, one after another, and they just do it one time a year, which is what you do in like college wrestling, right?
Yeah.
But PFL, I realized they freaking do that.
Yes.
They run a season, and then one event at the end of the year is championship fight after championship fight. So I'm pretty hyped for PFL to come back. Anthony Pettis, a lot of good guys. Rory McDonald, a lot of good guys in PFL this year. But yeah, we're getting back into the swing of things. Finally, man.
Kenny Florian joining the desk too. I think that's a really nice addition.
Yeah, I was talking to, I can't remember who I was talking to on Twitter about this the other day, but they got Kenny Florian, Randy Couture, and Sean O'Connell.
Yeah, it's a good desk.
Their call. It might be one of the best desks outside of like Anik, Felder, and maybe like TC, whoever you like in the UFC. But for sure, I like the PFL desk better than whatever Bellator's putting out there with Goldberg and John McCarthy.
Fucking Goldie in 2021.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. I think ONE FC's got their card coming up too. They're going to be making their American debut with Eddie Alvarez, Demetrius Johnson on the card. Bellator is getting going. We're finally going to maybe. I mean, we're going to get Pitbull versus Sanchez, but hopefully we're going to get that Pitbull versus McKee fight later this year.
Whoa! I got big news. I'm looking on Twitter right now. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, dude, please.
Brett Okamoto. I don't know if you could pull up Twitter right now. Brett Okamoto just tweeted, Miesha Tate has decided to make a comeback. She will fight Marion Renault on July 17th, who tells ESPN that will be her retirement fight. Tate's career resumes, and Renault puts a bow on hers.
Okay,
wait, is this in
the
UFC? This is crazy. She's like had a kid and everything.
She had 2 kids, didn't she?
Yeah, she's coming back to fight in the UFC. Holy shit. She's 34. Goddamn. Good for her, I guess. It, man. I was always a Miesha fan. Yeah.
I was always a Miesha fan. Yeah. Yeah, there it is. So she fight Marion Renault. I mean, it's a decent fight to come back to. I mean, Renault lost her last fight, but she's always been pretty damn good. I like it. I really do. I really do like it.
Wow. I did not see that coming at all.
No. I don't know how much Miesha has left in the tank, or maybe she got a little stir crazy. But yeah, I'm excited to see her back. That's fun.
I mean, yeah, maybe she just missed it because she seems pretty like realistic. She can't think she's gonna come back and like beat Amanda Nunes or something like that. Like, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. But that's exciting. I mean, one of the OGs of the women's division for sure.
Literally one of the OGs. She had a great career. Was UFC champ. Yeah. Shall see. I thought she could have beat Ronda Rousey if she had a better goddamn game plan.
You could say that about like 7 of Ronda Rousey's opponents probably.
Yes. But dude, Miesha Tate, not to drag on too far, but if you remember that second fight, like she was like tuning her up on the feet, and then like she's like, all right, it seems like a good idea. Let me dive headfirst into the clinch and like, throw it on my neck. Like, come on, Miesha. Yeah, I love it. Fun.
Oh, that's crazy. Totally unexpected.
Very unexpected. Do you have a big drama show shirt on, by the way?
Yeah. Nice, I don't think I've ever plugged all in boxing. If you people listening or watching, follow All In Boxing on Instagram, or like I think that he probably has a website too. They make really cool like boxing apparel.
Nice.
Yeah, big drama show from Gennady Golovkin talking about the first Canelo fight.
Big drama show.
Yeah.
All right, dude. I don't got anything else. You?
That's it for me.
Catch us Friday for Best Bets. We are going to be back, hopefully winning you guys some money. We appreciate all the support. If you can, like, subscribe, share our video. Catch us on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get podcasts. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Face the pain.